Imagine you're faced with this challenge. You need to move, say, half a petabyte of data that's a staggering 500 terabytes across an ocean. What immediately springs to mind?
Well, for most of us in 2025, with super fast internet everywhere,
You just upload it, right? Seems obvious.
exactly. But what if that seemingly straightforward solution could actually turn into uh, a $20,000 mistake?
Okay, that's quite a hook.
Yeah, today on the Deep Dive, we're exploring why moving massive data sets internationally is far more intricate and potentially far more expensive than you might initially think.
We've been looking closely at a detailed analysis, haven't we? One that really unpacks the surprising obstacles and, crucially, the hidden costs involved.
That's the one. It really lays it all out.
Right, so our goal today is basically to dissect the realities of this task, which looks simple on the surface but isn't. We want to highlight the crucial factors you need to consider so you can steer clear of, well, a potential budgetary and logistical nightmare.
Definitely want to avoid that.
Okay, let's get into it. Half a petabyte, 500 terabytes. That analysis breaks it down even further. It's 500,000 gigabytes, just a massive amount. So the initial thought is, I'll just beam it across the internet.
And that's where you immediately hit the first major hurdle,
Yeah.
the bandwidth wall. It sounds simple, but
It's just physics, isn't it?
pretty much. Even with the gigabit per second connection, which sounds incredibly fast,
Yeah.
transferring 500 terabytes, assuming you get that full speed constantly.
Which you never do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even if you did, it would take around 48 days, nonstop.
48 days. Wow.
Yeah. And the analysis rightly points out that consistently achieving that maximum speed in real-world conditions, that's practically a fantasy. So the key takeaway here is that just relying on the internet for something this big is often impractical. The time involved, the unreliability, that's tough.
Right. Real life always seems to throw a wrench in the works. Okay, but let's be optimistic for a moment. Say you have access to a 10 gigabit connection. That sounds really fast.
It does indeed. And theoretically, you could transfer that amount of data in under 5 days.
Okay, that's more like it.
However, and this is a significant however, that assumes absolutely perfect circumstances,
Yeah.
like lab conditions.
The guy.
Always. We're talking no interruptions whatsoever, zero latency issues,
Mhm.
the delay in data transfer, no TCP congestion, slowing things down.
Which is like a digital traffic jam, basically.
Precisely. No problems with internet peering between networks. That's how different providers connect. And problems there can cause serious bottlenecks
Yeah.
and absolutely no one else on the network using bandwidth.
So, completely unrealistic then.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Realistically, you're looking at adding at least another week, maybe even 2, to that theoretical 5-day time frame. And if you're on a shared corporate network, forget about it.
So that initial optimistic idea of just uploading this massive data set quickly turns into, well, a bit of a pipe dream for most organizations.
Unless you have some very serious dedicated infrastructure at both ends,
What?
which most don't.
Okay, so if the direct internet upload isn't the magic bullet, what about the cloud? Seems like the next logical step, right? Just throw it up on AWS or Google Cloud or Azure. Problem solved.
That's the convenient trap that many fall into. And the analysis we looked at really shines a light on why this can be deceptive.
How so?
While the cloud offers incredible scalability and accessibility for storage, which is great,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to moving massive amounts of data out of the cloud again, your wallet might start feeling a serious pinch.
The egress fees. I've heard about those.
Exactly. The crucial insight is that while cloud storage looks convenient, retrieving massive data sets can lead to unexpectedly enormous costs.
Yeah.
It makes it a potentially very, very expensive option for this kind of data migration.
Lay it on us. What's the catch? Use the AWS example from the analysis.
Okay, so the analysis uses AWS as a prime example. Let's say you upload your 500 terabytes to an S3 bucket. The storage costs themselves maybe around $20.23 per gigabyte per month.
Which adds up quickly for 500 terabytes.
Oh yeah, that alone is about $11,500 a month, which is already hefty. But the real shocker, the sting in the tail, is the egress fee that's the charge specifically for taking your data out of their cloud.
Ouch. Okay. And how much are we talking? Ballpark.
For AWS, it's roughly 0.9 cents per gigabyte for outbound data beyond the first, 150 gigabytes or so.
9 cents a gig times 500,000 gigs minus a bit.
Doing the math, yeah, that could easily translate to around $45,000 just to retrieve the data you initially uploaded.
$45,000 just to get
Yeah.
your own data back.
Yep. It's staggering, right? The analysis really hammers home these potential hidden costs. And it points out that while other cloud providers like Google Cloud and Azure might have slightly different pricing models, they're not significantly cheaper for this scale and often come with their own set of restrictions or maybe slower speeds for egress.
Wow. So the convenience of the cloud can quickly turn into a massive five-figure expense just to move data you already own.
No.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, because the analysis then throws a real curveball at us. SneakerNet.
Uh-huh.
As in physically moving the data. Seriously.
Exactly. It sounds almost archaic in 2025, doesn't it? But as the analysis aptly puts it, at a certain point, the internet stops being your friend and you have to go analog. It's kind of wild.
So the surprising insight is that just shipping stuff can
Yeah.
actually be better.
Often, yes, it can frequently be faster and significantly cheaper than trying to do it online,
Yeah.
especially when you factor in those crazy cloud egress fees.
Okay, let's break down these SneakerNet options from the analysis. The first one mentioned is good old hard drives in, like, a Pelican case. Walk us through that.
Right. So you can buy high-capacity drives, say 24 terabyte hard drives, for around $500 each, give or take.
Okay.
For 500 terabytes, the analysis suggests needing about 22 of them, factoring in some overhead, maybe for redundancy.
Right, spares are good.
Yeah, so that puts you in the ballpark of $11,000 just for the drives themselves.
Still way less than 45K.
Oh, much less. Then you factor in a rugged protective case, like a Pelican, maybe custom foam inserts, individual drive protectors, plus the cost of overnight shipping with decent insurance.
Yeah.
You're looking at maybe another $500 to $800, something like that.
So all in, under $12,000 for the hardware and shipping.
Roughly, yeah.
Mm.
Significantly less than those potential cloud egress fees we talked about.
But there's more to it than just the hardware cost, right?
Right.
What about the hassle factor, the human cost?
Absolutely. And the analysis highlights several key human elements here. Someone, or maybe a team, needs to spend potentially days just copying all that data onto the drives. That's not trivial.
Right, just the loading time.
Then there's the careful packing process to ensure they actually survive the journey. Don't forget the customs paperwork that can be a real headache depending on the countries involved.
Oh yeah, customs. Fun.
And the coordination required on both the sending and receiving ends. Plus, there's always the risk of a drive failing in transit. Drives can be fragile. That could lead to delays and potential data loss if you haven't planned properly for redundancy.
And didn't the analysis mention something about customs and encryption?
Yeah, and Riley notes that trying to explain to a customs officer why you're importing, 24 encrypted hard drives can definitely raise some eyebrows and potentially cause delays. You need your paperwork sorted.
Definitely sounds like an adventure. Okay, now, the second analog option they bring up is LTO tapes. I honestly haven't heard much about those lately. The analysis calls them data's vinyl records. Tell us more.
That's a great analogy, actually. Tape technology hasn't stood still. Modern LTO-9 tapes can actually hold a massive 18 terabytes of uncompressed data each.
18 terabytes on one tape. Wow.
Yeah, it's impressive. And they cost around $85 each. So for 500 terabytes, you'd need about 28 of them.
Wait, 28 times $85.
And it brings the tape cost itself to under $2,400.
Wow. That's significantly cheaper than the hard drives. What's the catch? There has to be a catch.
The catch is the infrastructure. The tape drives, the machines that read and write the tapes. LTO-9 drives are quite expensive, upwards of $5,000 each, maybe more.
Ah, okay, so you need the player, not just the records.
Exactly. And they aren't exactly plug and play like a USB drive. You need someone on both ends who knows how to operate them, how to set up the systems for transferring data to the tapes and then from the tapes, and how to verify the integrity of that transfer. It requires specialized knowledge.
So it's cheaper media, but requires investment in hardware and expertise.
Correct. However, as the analysis points out, if both the sending and receiving teams already have this tape infrastructure in place, maybe for existing backup systems, then it becomes by far the most cost-effective solution.
Makes sense. Any other advantages to tape?
Yeah, tapes are also generally smaller and lighter than a big box of hard drives. They're considered more durable for shipping and less prone to damage from bumps or drops compared to spinning hard drives.
So what's the estimated all-in cost for tape, assuming the infrastructure exists?
The analysis puts it around $7,500, even factoring in shipping and handling. Still a fraction of those cloud egress fees, and cheaper than the hard drive route if you have the drives already.
Okay, so we've got these seemingly archaic methods, hard drives, tapes potentially being the saviors of our budget. But the title of this analysis, or the point it makes, mentions a potential $20,000 mistake. Where does that come in if we're avoiding the obvious upload or cloud egress traps.
Ah, that's where poor planning and just
Yeah.
bad decisions
Yeah.
rear their ugly heads.
Mm.
Even if you choose physical shipping, you can still mess it up badly. The analysis gives some very specific examples of how a seemingly straightforward transfer can balloon into a major financial blunder.
Okay, hit us with some of those potential pitfalls. How do you make a $20 K mistake here?
Well, one big one mentioned is skipping encryption, thinking, oh, it's just internal data. If customs opens your package and finds unencrypted sensitive data, your intellectual property is suddenly at serious risk. Huge potential cost there, even if not direct dollars immediately.
Right. IP loss is massive. What else?
Choosing the wrong storage media, like opting for smaller but much, much more expensive SSDs instead of traditional spinning hard drives because you think they're tougher. The analysis calculates they could easily multiply your hardware costs several times over, potentially hitting like $60,000 instead of $11,000.
Yikes. Okay, 60 grand is definitely a mistake.
Then there's forgetting redundancy, being cheap and not sending duplicates or using RAID. If a critical drive fails in transit and you don't have a backup readily available at the destination, you could lose a significant chunk of your data or face weeks of delay trying to resend it. The cost of that downtime can be enormous.
That sounds like an absolute nightmare. What else can go wrong on the planning side?
Underestimating the time it takes to actually load 500 terabytes onto individual drives manually, it's not just plugging them in. It takes time, verification.
No.
The analysis quips that it could turn into a month-long slog if you're not properly set up for it.
A month just copying data.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then there are the often overlooked costs. Things like customs duties, import taxes, VAT, or tariffs depending on the countries, proper shipping insurance for high-value data. These can easily add another, say, $5,000 more to your bill if you haven't budgeted for them.
Adds up fast.
And, as the analysis points out, probably the absolute worst-case scenario is trying one method, failing, and then resorting to the expensive option. Like maybe you try to upload, takes weeks, fails halfway, and then you bite the bullet and pay the massive cloud egress fees anyway. Now you've wasted time and money. You could be looking at over $40,000 in egress fees, plus significant downtime that impacts your actual production schedules. That's how you get well past a $20 mistake.
So it's crystal clear that you can't just, throw 500 terabytes into a box, slap a label on it, and hope for the best. The analysis then moves on to what it calls the SMART playbook for shipping this much data. What are some of the key takeaways there for doing it right?
Yeah, the playbook basically emphasizes meticulous planning and attention to detail. It's about treating it like the serious logistical operation it is.
Okay, like what specifically?
First and foremost, encrypt everything before it leaves your hands. No exceptions.
Yeah.
Use strong, standard encryption.
Makes sense. What else?
Use robust disk imaging tools or something like ZFS snapshots. These are like exact copies of your data at a specific point in time to ensure the data arrives at its destination exactly as it left. It helps with integrity verification.
So you know nothing got corrupted.
Exactly. Then, implement a rigorous labeling and tracking system for every single drive or tape. Know what's on each one, track its serial number. Inventory is crucial, especially if you're sending multiple batches.
Good point. Redundancy.
Absolutely critical. Plan for redundancy, whether that means mirroring drive sets, using RAID with double parity if you're sending arrays, or simply creating duplicate batches of media to ship separately or at different times. Assume something might go wrong.
Murphy's Law of Data Transfer.
Pretty much. Securely package everything. Use proper clamshell cases for individual drives, anti-static sleeves, plenty of protective foam, all within a hard shell waterproof case. Don't skimp on packaging.
And one more.
And finally, the analysis strongly recommends conducting a test transfer, especially if you're using a new method or a new shipping provider. Send a smaller test dataset first to iron out any kinks in the process, especially with customs.
That seems like very solid advice. They also briefly mentioned some premium services, right? What are those all about?
Yes, things like AWS Snowball, Seagate Live, or various other data transfer pods. These are essentially appliance-based shipping services. The company sends you a ruggedized, high-capacity storage device.
Ah, so you load onto their box.
Right. They offer benefits like potentially much faster data loading and unloading using high-speed interfaces, obviously hardened physical devices built for transit, and usually built-in encryption and tracking.
Sounds good. What's the downside?
While they do come with their own drawbacks, they tend to be quite costly compared to DIY shipping, and they often tie you into that vendor's proprietary ecosystem, which might not be ideal long-term. But for some, the convenience and speed might be worth the price.
Okay, so bringing it all together then. When it comes to moving this much data, 500 terabytes internationally, what's the real bottom line from this analysis?
I think the core message is that moving 500 terabytes isn't just a simple data transfer. It's a full-blown logistics operation. You have to plan for it like one.
And there are trade-offs.
Always trade-offs. You have to make conscious choices and understand you're usually trading off between cost, time, and complexity. You generally can't optimize for all three.
So quick recap, physical shipping is probably fastest.
Generally, yeah. Shipping hard drives or even tapes is often the fastest way to get the bulk data there compared to internet speeds.
Tape is cheapest.
If you already have the necessary tape drive infrastructure at both ends, then it's usually the most cost-effective per terabyte.
In the cloud.
The cloud offers the most convenience for getting the data somewhere initially, but it comes at that potentially exorbitant price if you need to pull it out again later.
So, as the analysis so succinctly puts it, the $20,000 mistake isn't really in the method you choose.
It's in assuming you can wing it. That sums it up perfectly.
Yeah.
Because when you're dealing with half a petabyte of data, the analysis concludes that the biggest risk isn't necessarily data corruption or customs delays or drive failure, although those are risks. The biggest risk is complacency. Just thinking it's a trivial task you can figure out as you go.
Right. So as you've heard, that seemingly straightforward question, how do I move this giant pile of data, has some surprisingly complex answers. Ignoring those hidden costs and logistical hurdles, well, it can lead to significant problems.
Hopefully this deep dive has given everyone listening a clearer understanding of the challenges involved and maybe some critical things to think about for making more informed decisions if they ever face this kind of task.
Definitely. So next time you think about a massive data transfer, maybe consider this.
Wow.
Are you fully prepared for that complex digital journey with all its potential pitfalls? Or is it maybe time to embrace the surprisingly effective power of the physical world?
It's a fascinating question in our digital age. There's always more to explore in the world of data logistics and beyond. Join us next time as we take another deep dive into the topics that matter to you.